Miles O'Brien has a report on how mail-in voting really works and what past experience shows.
It's August 14th in Ocala, Florida. 4 days until a primary election, and most of the ballots have been cast. They roll in every day in bins from the post office, right past the office of Wesley Wilcox.
What's today? 3. Good deal.
Supervisor of Elections for Marion County.
If you'd asked me 10 years ago, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, or if you'd asked me 5 minutes ago, am I a proponent of vote by mail? I am. I like vote by mail.
And so do most Floridians. The state that became infamous for antiquated, ambiguous punch card voting during the disputed Bush versus Gore presidential contest 20 years ago has fully embraced early voting and absentee ballots for anyone who asks, including Palm Beach resident Donald Trump.
Thank you very much.
Who votes by mail while repeatedly trashing the process, suggesting it is rigged and rife with fraud.
All these ballots come in, these mailed ballots come in. The mailed ballots are corrupt, in my opinion, and they collect them and they get people to go in and sign them, and then they're forgeries in many cases. It's a horrible thing.
The rhetoric is not supported by reality. The Conservative Heritage Foundation maintains an online database of documented election fraud cases in the United States. It lists 204 cases of absentee ballot fraud with 143 criminal convictions over the past 20 years. On average, that's one case per state every 7 years, representing about 0.00006% of total votes cast.
A lot of the things that people talk about, vote by mail, just aren't reality. You know, you can't run down to the Wawa or the Circle K and pick up a handful of vote by mail ballots. It's just not there.
Amber McReynolds is CEO of the National Vote at Home Institute and Coalition.
The reason it's exceedingly rare is that there's multiple steps and checks in the system that prevent it and would identify it if it were to occur.
McReynolds was director of elections in Denver when the state of Colorado left traditional Election Day polling behind in 2013. In Colorado, every active registered voter gets a ballot in the mail automatically. They can return the ballots by mail, at drop boxes, and a few choose to vote in person. Jocelyn Bucaro is Amber McReynolds' successor.
We only had about 1% of our voters in the state primary vote in person. So that, tells us that, and we hope will be repeated in November, that voters will vote that ballot at home and use one of our secure methods to return it.
Bucaro and her team showed me how they do it. Ballot envelopes here are imprinted with an intelligent mail barcode, a number unique to each voter, which allows tracking through the mail. The envelopes are run through a customized mail sorter that is connected to the registration database. Drake Ramke is a project coordinator here.
So anytime I run this machine, it's got the most up-to-date information. So if somebody voted in person an hour ago, and then we get their mail ballot that comes through, it's going to be kicked out as void because they voted in person out front.
So it's real time.
Signatures are initially checked with software. About 20% are automatically accepted that way. The rest are verified, along with 2% of the machine choices to double-check its performance.
We do extensive training both internally, and then we bring in a handwriting expert that has worked with the FBI prior to every election to give more tips.
The envelopes are opened by machines to maintain the secrecy of ballots. Then they are fed into high-speed scanners to be tallied. Voters are instructed to carefully fill in the ovals. But on some ballots, 1.6% in the last election, they don't fill them in completely or use X's, checks, or other markings.
And in that case, the software will ask humans to take a look at that and say, is this a mark or not? And we have bipartisan teams of election judges who do that ballot adjudication.
Colorado is among 6 states that vote almost entirely by mail. But the COVID-19 pandemic has prompted others to consider ways for people to vote without spending a lot of time in line with strangers.
And I started getting a lot of calls, like, what would this look like? Could we scale this nationally?
She says yes, but not without difficulty. The June 9th primary in Georgia was a case in point. More than 1 million people voted by mail. The previous record was 35,000. This created chaos and confusion. Many voters didn't get their ballots in time and were uncertain that their votes were received and counted. That prompted Wanda Hayes to try a belt and suspenders approach. I met her waiting in a long line to vote in person. Did you try to vote absentee?
I sure did.
What happened?
Well, I received my ballot and I sent it in, but I don't know if it was received or not. So,
So you want to make sure?
yes, right.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says 1,000 Georgians double voted in the June primary and August runoff. The announcement gave some traction to President Trump's critique of mail-in voting and his suggestion to supporters to try and vote twice. But Raffensperger warned the public that what the president is encouraging people to do is a crime.
Double voting is a felony. It's a minimum of 1 year in prison, up to 10 years, up to a $100,000 fine, and we will prosecute.
Back in Florida, Wesley Wilcox's team is taking this unprecedented election year in stride. They didn't break a sweat sorting, processing, and scanning ballots in the August primary. By Election Day, they only needed to push a button to tally the votes. But elsewhere, things are not running as smoothly. In Tennessee, the law prevents election workers from even opening envelopes containing ballots until Election Day. Several other states, including Michigan and Pennsylvania, have similar constraints. Wilcox is hearing a lot from his counterparts in places where they are struggling to answer the mail. This is an extraordinary election. Are they all kind of freaking out?
You know, short answer, probably yes. But there's the election administrator prayer, you know, Lord, I don't care who wins as long as they win big. You know, and that's reality.
The reality is, election night will likely be more like election week, while we all wait for the envelopes, please. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Miles O'Brien in Ocala, Florida.